In a small village nestled at the foot of the Great Afajado Mountains, lived a boy named Kofi. Unlike the other children, whose laughter echoed through the valleys, Kofi was quiet. He wasn't sad or shy, just ... observant. His eyes, deep and thoughtful, were always fixed on the towering peaks that touched the clouds. The villagers would often whisper, "Kofi has his head in the mountains," and they were right, but not in the way they imagined. Every morning, Kofi would walk to the base of the largest mountain, a giant of rock and earth the elders called the Old Man. He would sit on a smooth, sun-warmed stone and simply watch. He watched the way the morning mist clung to its slopes like a soft blanket, the way the sun painted its face with strokes of gold and orange, and the way the shadows danced and shifted as the day grew old. He felt a connection, a deep, silent conversation that no one else seemed to notice. One day, an elder named Ojua, whose face was a beautiful map of wrinkles and wisdom, sat beside him. "What do you see, little one?" she asked, her voice as gentle as the evening breeze. Kofi, who rarely spoke more than a few words, found himself opening up. "I'm listening to him," he said, pointing a small finger towards the peak. Ojua smiled. "And what does the old man say to you?" Kofi hesitated. "He doesn't use words," he explained. "It's more of a feeling. He tells me about patience. He says he wasn't always this tall." Ojua's eyes widened with interest. "Go on," she urged. "He says," Kofi continued, his voice barely a whisper, "that he grew slowly, grain by grain, rock by rock, pushed up from the earth over a time so long, no one can count the sunrises. He says the wind and rain tried to wear him down, but for every piece they took, the earth gave him more strength from below. His real growth, the pushing up, was happening deep inside where no one could see it." Ojua placed a hand on Kofi's shoulder. "You are a very special boy, Kofi. Not many people have the patience to listen to a mountain." Over the coming weeks, Kofi's listening deepened. He learned that the mountain didn't fear the storms, for they washed its face and helped the seeds in its cracks to sprout. He learned that the mountain wasn't lonely, for it was home to countless trees, animals, and rivers, each a part of its whole. It was a community, a living, breathing being. Meanwhile, back in the village, the annual Yam Festival was approaching. A key part of the celebration was a competition to see who could grow the largest, most perfect yam. Kofi's friend, Kwame, was determined to win. Every day, Kwame was in his garden, watering his yam vine obsessively, measuring its leaves, and boasting about how fast it was growing. "Look, Kofi," he would shout, "another 2 inches today. Mine will be the biggest in the village." Kofi also had a small patch of earth. He had planted his yam seed, and he tended to it, but he did so differently. He watered it just enough. He cleared the weeds. But mostly, he sat near it, remembering the mountain's wisdom. He didn't dig around the roots to check its progress. He didn't constantly measure the vine. He trusted the process. He trusted the quiet, unseen growth happening beneath the soil, just as the mountain grew from deep within the earth. Kwame and the other villagers laughed at him. "Kofi is trying to talk his yam into growing," they joked. "He's as quiet as his plant." Kofi didn't mind. He just smiled and continued his silent vigil, feeling the life thrumming in the soil. He knew that the most important work was happening in the dark, away from prying eyes. The day of the festival arrived. The village square was filled with music, dancing, and the delicious smell of roasted corn. One by one, the contestants brought their yams to be judged. Kwame strode forward confidently, carrying a massive yam. The vine had been long, and the leaves had been huge, and the yam itself was impressive. The crowd cheered. Everyone was sure he was the winner. Then, it was Kofi's turn. He walked to his small garden. His vine was healthy but not unusually long. The leaves were green but not enormous. He began to dig. He dug carefully, respectfully, clearing the earth away from the treasure below. He dug, and he dug, and he dug. The villagers who had been laughing grew quiet. The hole became wider and deeper. Finally, with the help of his father and another man, he lifted his yam from the earth. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. It was a giant. It was not just long, but thick and dense. A perfect, powerful shape. It was heavier, more solid, and far larger than Quamus or anyone else's. Quamus stared in disbelief. "But how?" he stammered. "My vine grew so much faster. My leaves were bigger." Kofi, holding a piece of his magnificent yam, looked at his friend and then towards the Old Man Mountain, standing silent and proud against the sky. "You were watching the leaves," Kofi said softly. "I was listening to the roots." He explained the mountain's lesson, that true, lasting strength isn't always visible. The most powerful growth often happens slowly, steadily, and in secret. The leaves and vines might be what everyone sees, the part that looks impressive. But the real power, the substance, comes from the patient, hidden work happening underground. From that day on, the villagers looked at Kofi differently. They no longer saw him as just a quiet boy. They saw him as the boy who spoke to mountains, the boy who understood the power of unseen growth. And when they looked at the Great Afajado Mountains, they didn't just see rock and stone. They saw a timeless lesson in patience, in resilience, and in the profound truth that the most significant changes are often the ones that happen quietly, deep within. This story reminds us that in our own lives, we can get fixated on the visible signs of success, the promotions, the praise, the things we can show off. But real growth, the development of our character, our skills, and our wisdom, happens like Kofi's yam and the Old Man Mountain. It happens in the quiet moments of study, in the consistent effort when no one is watching, in the patient nurturing of our own roots. Don't be discouraged if your progress isn't loud or flashy. Trust the process. The most powerful growth is the kind that builds a solid foundation, unseen, until it's time to reveal the incredible strength you've been building all along. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tales of wisdom. Until next time, be patient with your own journey.